Salutations, everyone, and we're here to talk about the season finale of The Flash. So, obviously, spoilers if you haven't seen it yet. Catch up, or if you've never seen this show before, watch the first three seasons of The Arrow and then the first season of The Flash. It was, as a first season of a television show, I think one of the best, bar none, the best superhero TV show first season ever. It was really damn good, and that finale was crazy. So let's talk about it. First off, from a comic book perspective, this season, this show has been very rewarding in that it takes place in an alternate timeline that still makes sense within the comic book universe that it's set in, because it's just an alternate timeline. So you see things that are different but kind of the same. How you have like Caitlin Snow, for instance, who's going to be Killer Frost probably eventually in the next season, based on what we saw from the Speed Force. Instead of needing Firestorm's fire to live, they're in love, and instead of Barry getting his powers at an older age, he gets at a younger age. So different things happen. The particle accelerator gives people powers. So it was very, it was nice from a comic book perspective, from the whole time traveling thing, which I didn't expect them to do in the show, at least in the first season. And then when they pulled that out after Weather Wizard's tidal wave, that was crazy. But all this culminated in the season finale of The Flash. And first off, they established that Dr. Wells, aka Eobard Thawne. Oh, and thank you anyway, the Flash writers, for telling me how to actually finally pronounce Eobard. I just been saying Ebard for decades. So we knew that he was the villain from the very first episode, and it's been amping up, and then he found out a secret, and then it was all out, and then now we have him imprisoned after taking him down along with, Ollie and Firestorm. And now we have the whole time traveling thing, the thing that episode 1 amped us up to see. And then when we found out that, Barry was there too, and it was from it was crazy. So like, we've all been amping up to see when this was going to happen. When was Barry going to go back in time? And it turns out a little sooner than maybe some people would have thought, but what a hell of a finale it was. We got to see him go through the Speed Force and travel back in time on purpose. This time we got to see all the little flashes of things that from his past, from his future. We saw the Flash Museum, and I'm wondering if some of these other images we saw were from the future or from alternate worlds, aka Earth 2. We saw Caitlin Snow as Killer Frost for the first time, which hasn't been hinted at all throughout this entire series. Juxtapose that to Cisco. We've seen a lot of things this whole season about him being Vibe. He was killed by a vibrating hand, he was resuscitated by Barry's vibrating hands, and he was able to remember what happened in an alternate timeline because he is Vibe. For those of you who don't know Vibe's power, he has the unique power of being able to negate the Speed Force. No one else can do that. He was actually recruited to the JLA just in case something goes wrong with Barry. He can negate Speed Force. He's the only one in the world that can do that. So the fact that he's able to remember a timeline that didn't officially happen makes perfect sense from a comic book perspective. And the last episode, talking with Dr. Wells, and it was pretty much revealed that he was indeed exposed to the particle accelerator radiation and got powers. And Eobard Thawne's like, yeah, all right, I had my suspicions, but not until now. And that was really cool. So we don't know if this Caitlin Snow thing is going to be taken from an alternate universe, because Barry went up, and the huge cliffhanger of that time paradox thing that happened. You had, Professor Stein giving Eddie that lecture that was really cool about coincidence, and it seemed like he was hinting at the possibility of Eddie killing himself and making Eobard Thawne nothing of the future. But I didn't think that the show would go that far. I was like, I know that he can do that and that would prevent that, but I don't think the show would do that. And then they did, and that was surprising because, Eddie has been, set up to be a guy that there's going to be a turn where he's going to, hate Barry or something, but it never happened. I thought that was really cool of the writers to stay away from that classic trope. He's been a good guy through and through, and he died a good guy. When Cisco and Eobard, Thawne were talking about how to make the time machine not combust, and then Thawne said, oh, coat it in cobalt, dust, blah, 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 incendiary thing, it won't happen. I was like, cobalt, that's weird. I didn't know that would stop, incendiary properties. Okay, whatever. But then, when the wormhole opens, and we saw Jay Garrick's helmet fly out of there, I was like, holy shit, that's Jay's helmet! And Thawne obviously knows that's, because he's like, that's my cue to leave. So, like, what does that mean? We have no idea. Does that mean that Jay is here? Does it mean that, it's gonna be from Earth 2? Or, it's just so many questions. But then, it all started to make a little bit more sense after Eddie killed himself. Because then he gets sucked up into the wormhole, so I was thinking, oh, alright, they're going to keep it ambiguous if he dies or not, even though, or the reverse Plash disappeared, what have you. He was like, alright, they're going to keep the possibility of him coming back, and then I saw the little time machine parts go in with him, and that's when it all clicked. Eddie Thawne, going into a wormhole with Colbalt parts. Thawne, Colbalt, he's Colbalt Blue. He's going to be turning into Colbalt Blue. For those of you who don't know, Colbalt Blue is a supervillain named Malcolm Thawne. Malcolm Thawne is actually the twin brother of Barry. They were separated by birth. There was a doctor who was drunk. Nora Allen had twins. They were told one of them was stillborn, and Barry's the one that survived. The Thawne family had a baby whose umbilical cord was tied around, and he died. So the drunk doctor was like, oh, let me just give one of the babies to them. And Malcolm Thawne ended up resenting his family because he didn't have inherited the powers that the rest of his family have to control this magical blue flame. And then his grandmother taught him how to use the blue flame. And then he found out that he was Barry's brother, and he became obsessed with Barry and the Flash, and he was jealous that he got these speed powers. And he realized that this blue flame can steal anything that he wants. And get this, he doesn't steal Barry's speed force. He doesn't steal Wally's speed. Whose speed does he steal? Jay Garrick. So the fact that Eddie dies is transported through this wormhole with this Colbalt to become Colbalt Blue, and then Jay's helmet comes out of nowhere. It might be a coincidence, but Mr. Stein told us about coincidences. So is this Jay's comeback to try to stop Colbalt Blue? Is it Colbalt Blue trying to go back and stop Eddie from killing himself? I know he's not Malcolm Thawne, but he's a Thawne anyway. So, it still would kind of make sense in the alternate universe time thing where, like, things aren't going to be the same, but some things are going to happen no matter what, as the Flash's dad said in prison, which of course was another fantastic scene. Every scene that they have, there's amazing, the amazing acting throughout the entire finale, as rest of the whole show, with Joe and Barry's relationship, and getting to see Cisco and his awesome lines like "so long and thanks for the fish." And we got to see, Caitlin and Firestorm, what's his face, Ronnie, get married, which was, a lot of people, I was like, that was kind of whatever. But, it showed Barry what, these people would be missing out if he changed time. So, of course, with this whole time travel thing, there's going to be a lot of, like, this doesn't make sense or this doesn't make sense. But I think within the context of a superhero show, it actually does make sense. Because when you think about it, if Eddie killed himself, then Eobard Thawne was never born. If he was never born, then Nora Allen lived, and then none of this would have happened, and then Eddie would have lived, but then Eobard would still have been born, so it created a paradox, and that's the point. It created a paradox. That's what the whole giant black hole singularity thing is, Buck of the Sky. Oh, by the way, why did they make Caitlin not know what a singularity was? She's a brilliant scientist. Of course she knows what a singularity is. I know what a singularity is. You know what a singularity is. Why'd they have her ask that when you had, like, Joe West in the same room? And it's just, or Eddie or something. It was like, really, that was the least believable thing, I think, of the entire episode, if you ask me. But with this paradox, everything's going to be sucked up because this timeline all of a sudden doesn't exist, so it's going to be sucked up. But then the Flash is going to reverse it, and he's going to cancel that out from happening, so it's going to be staying intact, even though it was supposed to be destroyed, which makes sense with the whole time travel paradox thing happening. And he created a paradox, so this time isn't supposed to happen, but Barry's going to stop that time from never happening, and it's going to stay the same because you got to keep the continuity with the TV show. So that makes us wonder what's going to happen in season 2. Is Barry going to be transported to an Earth 2 in which, Caitlin is Killer Frost and he gets sent to jail for some reason? And obviously he's not going to go to the future because that would be way too many implications, I think, there. But these writers have had a lot of awesome ideas that have panned out very, very well. Relationships with certain characters outside of the whole Iris Barry thing. But like they treated Eddie well. Joe and Barry's relationship, Barry and his dad's relationship is just awesome. And people have been wondering, if Caitlin was ever going to turn to Killer Frost. And so we don't know if this is going to take place in season 2 when she becomes a supervillain. Or some people might think maybe she uses her powers for good. It is an alternate timeline after all. But most likely she'll use it for evil for whatever reason. But does this take place in this current timeline that we've seen? Or does Barry get transported into Earth 2 and then he has to, defeat people and have setbacks and find his way back to Earth 1, which is where the season 1 took place the whole time. And in that case, if he goes back to Earth 2 and that's where the show ends up being, does Dr. Wells still being the actual Dr. Wells, not Eobard Thawne wearing a Wells mask? Is he going to, be Mr. Wells and help Barry like they did in the first season, except it's the actual Dr. Wells? So, we have a lot of questions about, is this actor returning and what role, and is this person going to turn bad? Is this bad person going to turn good? There's a lot of questions. We also saw like little peeks at Legends of Tomorrow in the Speed Force. We saw a little clip that I'm pretty sure we've seen from the trailer that has the Atom and Hot Girl and stuff. And then when the hole's going above, you see Hot Girl, and then you've seen Captain Cold, and then you see the chief of police for some reason. But there's so many questions and so many possibilities, but ultimately a fantastic finale for a fantastic show in just the first season. Had a very, very satiable and rewarding story arc from beginning to end, and that's what a TV show should be, especially one with such great damn source material. So, thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think. Is Colbalt Blue going to come? Is Caitlin Frost going to be in this timeline or in an Earth 2 timeline? What's with the whole Jay Garrick helmet thing? And I don't know. There's a lot of things to think about, but it was pretty damn awesome. So leave your comments in the section below, and I will see you guys next time.